He loaded 5 bullets into the rifle, then through the gaps in the flower bed, he saw 5 Nazi German soldiers. Theoretically, it was impossible to take them all down and retreat unscathed. As an enemy patrol gradually approached, the propaganda officer beside him felt despair. But Vassili was not the least bit flustered. Instead, under the cover of explosions, he shot the officer in the forehead. He then blew another officer's brains out. Even though the patrol was right in front of him, Vassili remained calm and composed. The third shot was another direct hit. Just before the patrol threw a grenade, he shot him in the head. Seeing the last enemy trying to escape, he quickly stood up, aimed, and fired, hitting the head with 5 consecutive shots. With just 5 bullets, Vassili saved Danilov and made a name for himself in one battle. This is a true event from World War II. At this time, the German army was unstoppable. The flames of war quickly reached Stalingrad in the Soviet Union. As it was the last barrier to the Asian oil fields, it concerned the survival of the entire world. To prevent it from falling, untrained and untested new recruits were continuously sent directly to the front lines. As soon as the car door opened, everyone was so frightened they stepped back. The officer, ignoring their emotions, pulled them directly off the vehicle. Vassili was among these newly arrived recruits. It was September 20, 1942. As soon as they got off the train, the soldiers were driven to the shore at gunpoint by the officers. Amidst the chaos, everyone fearfully boarded the ferry. Seeing the water filled with floating corpses, everyone's hearts were filled with fear. But before they could react, the German warplanes roared in. The ship in front was instantly blown to pieces. Then came round after round of relentless bombing. Facing continuous strafing, they had no effective means of defense and could only huddle like lambs in the crowded cabin. Some recruits, not yet pierced by bullets, were so terrified they mentally broke down and chose to jump overboard to save themselves. But in Soviet doctrine, deserters were no different from the enemy. Therefore, the officer pulled the trigger without hesitation. Seeing comrades whose names he didn't even know lose their lives, Vassili's mind went blank. Amidst this chaotic scene, was the ship Vassili was on. Carrying the surviving soldiers to the dock, they didn't have time to glance at the corpses and blood in the cabin. They were forcibly dragged ashore again. At this time, there was smoke everywhere in the soldiers' hobbies. When it was time to receive weapons, Vassili, the sharpshooter, discovered that on average, only 1 gun was given for every 2 people. Those without guns had to follow those with guns, and when a companion died, they would pick up his gun and continue fighting. In this way, Vassili, who only got 5 bullets, followed the main force to the front line. However, facing the German army's all-encompassing firepower suppression, their charge did not achieve any advancement. Even if all Soviet soldiers had weapons, they might not be able to push forward, let alone at least half of them were unarmed. Soon, this one-sided battle caused most soldiers to lose their fighting spirit. They began to shout for retreat. As the voices grew louder, the surviving soldiers started to run back. Little did they know, the officers had already set up machine guns at the rear. This was a battle that could not be won, but also could not be retreated from. They would either die at the hands of the enemy or become ghosts under the guns of their own side. Vassili, who couldn't find a gun, was also caught in a dilemma. However, due to the overwhelming disparity in strength, the battle soon ended in a Soviet defeat. The square, which was filled with gunfire a moment ago, now only had crows pecking at the corpses. At this time, the German tanks did not leave but kept aiming at the surrounding kilns. Danilov, who was responsible for reporting the battle situation, accidentally drove into this area and was immediately blown over by a German shell. Fortunately, he survived by luck and quickly crawled into the ruined fountain filled with debris. Facing the German soldiers searching nearby, he had no choice but to play dead. Luckily, the bullets did not hit him. Originally planning to shoot the 5 German soldiers ahead, he was stopped by Vassili, who also survived. It turned out that Vassili had learned sniping from his grandfather since childhood, so he knew how to increase his chances of success. Sure enough, using the sound of nearby shell explosions as cover, he didn't waste a single bullet, hitting each target in the head. His extraordinary marksmanship gave Danilov hope for victory for the first time. After returning to the camp, Danilov arranged for the printing workers to quickly print a batch of leaflets. These were to announce the good news of Vassili killing 5 German soldiers. Danilov really explained the purpose of doing this to him, which made Vassili, as a new recruit, feel flattered. Due to the failure of this battle, the frontline commander is being reprimanded by the envoys sent from Moscow. He cried bitterly, saying the Germans have cannons, planes, and tanks, while we don't even have weapons. The envoy sternly rebuked him, calling it a dereliction of duty. Then, he walked past, guarded the wall, slammed the door hard, and left. The commander understood the implication from above and could only swallow his tears and commit suicide with a gun. Everyone was startled by the gunshot. Facing the envoy's pressure, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. The envoy introduced himself to the crowd. His name is Khrushchev. From today, he will take over the front line here. He needs everyone to muster courage and discard cowardice and timidity. He hopes everyone can suggest ways to boost morale and win this difficult war. No one knows what to do. Suddenly, a shout came from the crowd, giving them hope. It was Danilov. The envoy pushed others aside and stared intently at this young man. Danilov suggested that a military newspaper must be published here to tell soldiers inspiring stories and praise sacrifice and bravery. They must be given hope, pride, and a desire to fight. This requires setting examples and creating heroes on the battlefield. The envoy was very interested in his suggestion and arranged for him to act immediately without delay. When Vassili arrived at the printing house, they were printing the newspaper, Medical Instruments. Vassili was already prominently featured on the front page. Danilov saw him excitedly coming downstairs. He introduced to Vassili that they would shape him into a hero known by everyone, even the leader would see his heroic deeds in the newspaper. Due to his effective suggestion, Danilov was promoted to the general staff. The new recruit Vassili was assigned to the sniper division, and they laughed happily, embracing each other. They all knew very well what this meant. A war myth belonging to the Soviet Union now had a human name at this moment. Whether Vassili could survive until the end of the war or not, this new belief had to be invincible. Soon, Vassili's achievements became the only information everyone focused on in the newspaper. Vassili specifically hunted down those German officers. As the number of kills increased, frontline soldiers and ordinary people regarded Vassili as a Soviet hero. They no longer cared about the date but focused on how many Germans Vassili killed today. On this day, Vassili, like usual, was at his sniper spot searching for targets. Suddenly, a little boy came over and invited him to rest at his home. Needing to replenish his strength and sleep, Vassili followed the boy to an underground station after confirming there was no threat. This was the home of the boy, Sasha, who lived with his single mother. They had heard of Vassili's legend through newspapers and radio, and they admired the legendary sharpshooter. While they were exchanging pleasantries, Danilov came in with a stack of letters. These were letters from people all over the country expressing their admiration and encouragement for Vassili. To not let their enthusiasm go to waste, Danilov decided to have Vassili write personal replies as he dictated. Initially, they were laughing and cooperating well, until Tania's sudden appearance disrupted everything. She was Sasha's neighbor. Because the two families interacted so frequently, they were more like family than neighbors. Although Tanya looked disheveled at the time, her clear eyes and beautiful appearance still moved Danilov. What he didn't know was that Vassili had met Tanya on the train when he was first drafted. At that time, he already had thoughts about her, but because of the war, he didn't have the right to continue fantasizing. Now, bearing the hopes of the entire nation, he was even less able to express personal feelings. However, Danilov didn't care and even arranged for Tanya to work as a communications officer at the command post after learning she spoke German, just to spend more time with her. Originally, Tanya wanted to work as a security officer in the community to protect everyone's safety, but Danilov was willing to trade 12 soldiers to have Tanya transferred to his side. Meanwhile, the German army, having lost their commander, sent Colonel König, a German sniper legend, to eliminate Vassili. He was the head of the German sniper school. Many Soviet snipers had been his students before the war. Not only was his marksmanship precise, but his intuition was also intimidating. The colonel's only mission was to find any way possible to take down Vassili. Unaware of this, Vassili continued leading his team on missions. Today, they had already taken down 7 targets, and the 8th was also within their grasp. After successfully taking down the target, Vassili and his teammates went inside the building to retrieve his dog tags. This is what counts as an effective kill. Just as the two were sneaking up to the building, the soldier left outside had already entered the colonel's scope. The sound of the bombing masked the gunshot, so Vassili and his companion didn't notice anything unusual. Once inside the house, Vassili's intuition told him things weren't that simple. The gun barrel hidden behind the coat confirmed Vassili's fears. While the colonel was lying in wait, Vassili's teammate discovered that the body they saw earlier was actually a dummy. Vassili, who was behind, also immediately saw the trap. Likewise, as a sniper, Vassili knew the opponent must be a high-level presence. This realization left him feeling suffocated. This opponent was completely different from those he had faced before. He was in the open, while the enemy was hidden. At this moment, any mistake would mean total annihilation. Under the colonel's scope, every corner, even the stairs, was clearly visible. As soon as Vassili and his companion showed themselves, they would be doomed. Suddenly, a fleet of bombers appeared in the sky, launching a new round of bombing on the area. Watching the incoming bombs, Vassili's teammate was overwhelmed with fear. Instinctively, he wanted to leave the house. But Vassili knew very well that this was the moment the enemy had been waiting for. Therefore, he tried hard to persuade his teammate to stay put. However, in extreme panic, his teammate lost his mind. As soon as he stood up, the colonel shot him in the head. Vassili narrowly escaped after the bombing ended and returned to the camp. He was deeply remorseful, regretting that he had led them into a trap. Moreover, the enemy sniper was meticulous, experienced, and superior in speed and accuracy. Danilov was not surprised when he heard this. He had known about this for a long time. For Danilov, Vassili could not fail, or his political career would end as well. So, he assigned Vassili a teammate, Kulikov, who had studied under the colonel before the war and was familiar with his habits. Danilov believed that with their teamwork, the colonel would eventually become a corpse. However, they underestimated the colonel's strength. To better boost the morale of the entire nation, Khrushchev specially met with Vassili, took photos with him in front of the national media, and widely publicized it to promote this hero when they returned. The next morning, Kulikov woke Vassili from his sleep. Their hunt was about to begin. However, in the eyes of the opponent, they are also prey now. Passing through an abandoned passage, Vassili looked up, immediately ducked, took out money, forgot to observe for a moment, and then realized the opponent was using the same trick again. Although there was no immediate danger, it meant the enemy was definitely nearby. To lure them out, the group braved the gunfire and rushed into a dilapidated building. Fortunately, they moved quickly, and only Kulikov's new pants got a hole. This made him curse, calling the enemy bastards. He instructed Vassili to cut the German army's telephone line. Once the line was cut, the Germans would lose communication, so they would definitely send someone to fix it. Now, Vassili and his team just needed to change locations and wait for the enemy. They quickly moved with their equipment, crossing the broken buildings to the other side of the building. Each time, the observer saw someone carrying a cable come out to repair it. Kulikov aimed his gun, waiting for the person to enter his sights, and without hesitation, took them out with one shot. The next day, the colonel received their sniper report. 2 soldiers, 1 observer, 1 central defender, and 3 communication soldiers. However, they also captured Vassili's observer. Seeing that they couldn't get any useful information from him, the colonel had him change into a German uniform and pretend to repair the line while carrying a cable. Under the threat of a gun, the observer in German uniform had no choice, and the colonel's purpose was to find Vassili's location. Meanwhile, Kulikov, holding his gun, repeated the tactic, taking out the fake German with one shot. Just as the colonel was searching for their location, Kulikov set up a helmet. Knowing the colonel well, he realized the enemy deliberately sent someone to die to find their location. So, by luring the colonel to shoot, they could create an opportunity for Vassili to strike. However, when he set up the helmet, the expected gunshot never came. Disappointed, he thought the colonel never showed up. After the plan failed, the two decided to return the way they came. At this point, Vassili felt something was off. After the Germans lost one repairman, they immediately sent another, which was definitely not foolish. The plan didn't work, not because the colonel wasn't there, but likely because the enemy had seen through their little trick. But Kulikov thought Vassili was being overly nervous and didn't pay much attention. The two of them were completely unaware. The colonel's hunt had just begun when, as the two quickly jumped over the gap, Krum was precisely shot in the head. Vassili gritted his teeth and looked down, gasping at the sight of the already dead Kulikov. It was a moving target, and the area was very small. The two had almost jumped over at the same time, otherwise Vassili would have been done for today. If earlier he had harbored any illusions of being able to compete with the opponent, now he was very sure he had no chance of winning. Worse still, not only did Vassili feel an unprecedented threat of death, but Danilov at the base was also given an ultimatum by his superiors. If they couldn't take out the German sniper, both he and Vassili would be in serious trouble. So, when Vassili was about to back down, he revealed his trump card. "I've planted a spy next to the colonel. Next time, you will definitely be able to act before he does." Sure enough, after hearing this, Vassili's nerves finally relaxed. Seeing this, Danilov immediately changed the subject. It turned out that the clever Tanya, knowing that Danilov had feelings for her, asked Danilov to let her return to the community. Compared to a desk job, she preferred to handle matters on the front line for the country. Now, Danilov hoped Vassili could persuade Tanya. That evening, Vassili found Tanya and explained the situation. After hearing it, Tanya didn't waver but instead solemnly explained her reasons. Not long ago, the German army captured a group of Soviet prisoners. To save bullets, they tied them together in pairs and lined them up by the river. By shooting one person, the other would be dragged underwater by the corpse. This way, one bullet could take 2 lives. Antonia's parents were among them. So, to avenge her parents, Tanya chose to face the enemy head-on. Having also experienced the pain of losing family, Vassili no longer tried to dissuade her but instead handed her the late Kulikov's gun. Meanwhile, the colonel, as usual, was enjoying his shoe-shining time. The one shining his shoes was the young boy Sasha, who was also the informant Danilov mentioned. Although Sasha had already gained the colonel's trust by selling information, Danilov felt it wasn't enough. After all, the opponent was a cunning old fox who couldn't fully trust the enemy's child. So this time, he directly had Sasha reveal the time and route of Vassili's next action. After receiving the news, the colonel immediately went to the designated location and then moved the corpse holding the gun. He then lay down in the same spot. I must admit, the colonel is indeed cunning, because if Vassili passes by here again, he might mistake him for the previous corpse and let his guard down. However, the Sandman also passed his information to Vassili, so this time Vassili didn't take the old route. Instead, he and his teammate went into the pipes, planning to circle around and attack the colonel from behind. However, the sound of the pipes vibrating caught the colonel's attention. He quickly got up and changed his position, then aimed at the only exit of the pipe, waiting quietly for his prey to appear. Soon, Vassili emerged, but since there was a pipe blocking in front of him, the colonel couldn't aim at the target. At this moment, Vassili's teammate also emerged. Originally, the two planned to split up, but as soon as the teammate stood up, he was shot in the shoulder. In the chaos, Vassili also dropped his rifle. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and hid in the sniper's blind spot. After his injured teammate retreated along the path, Vassili took out a military knife with a rope, preparing to hook back the rifle not far away. However, just as he managed to hook it, the connecting rope was shot and broken by a miraculous shot. Worse still, the German army suddenly launched a new round of attacks, with warplanes circling the sky and dropping a large number of bombs. Although the factory where Vassili was located wasn't destroyed, the shattered glass that fell reflected his face perfectly. Meanwhile, the injured teammate returned to the base and reported the situation to Tanya. Despite being supposed to evacuate, Tanya ran into the pipes without hesitation after hearing the news. When he emerged from the pipes, Vassili was startled. This was no joke. In front of a top sniper, even a single mistake could lead to death. After calming down, Vassili told Tanya the colonel's position and then instructed him to crawl behind the pillar with his head down. They only had one chance to turn the situation around. During the transfer, Tanya followed Vassili's instructions and found a piece of broken glass. Now, as long as he didn't move, he wouldn't be hit, so the colonel's target must be Tanya. Although through the mirror, the colonel could see Vassili communicating with another person. Unfortunately, they were both blocked by obstacles, leaving him as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. At this moment, Tanya was ready. Then, a strong reflection of light shone over, and while the colonel was blinded, Vassili quickly picked up the gun and shot the colonel's hand. The colonel, who returned like a shark, immediately found Sasha. Through this confrontation, he realized Vassili was even smarter than he imagined, so he needed to know more about Vassili. Sasha truthfully confessed everything, but the pride and admiration in his voice when mentioning Vassili made the sharp colonel suspicious. On the other side, Vassili, who narrowly escaped death, was drinking and celebrating with Tanya and his comrades. As frontline soldiers who could lose their lives at any moment, they knew they might not have a tomorrow, so every time they returned alive, they celebrated lavishly. After this life and death experience, the feelings between Vassili and Tanya began to heat up, which unexpectedly aroused Danilov's jealousy. To retaliate against this rival who stole his love, Danilov had Sasha tell the colonel that the Soviet army would send Vassili to support the attack on the factory the next day. Initially, upon hearing this news, Vassili didn't want to participate at all. Compared to killing the colonel, he preferred to kill ordinary officers as he did before. Of course, it was also because he was concerned about Tanya. Now, Vassili didn't want anything to happen to either of them. But Danilov couldn't make such a decision. Vassili had already been put on a pedestal, and to kill the colonel, he mentioned having Sasha act as an inside man. Looking at this innocent child, Vassili didn't know what to say for a moment. Being an inside man could be deadly, and Danilov was well aware of the danger involved. Despite his anger at the other party for using a child, Vassili had to accept the order for Sasha's safety. If she didn't go, Sasha would have deceived the colonel and might face danger because of it. So Vassili not only had to go but also had to make a perfect shot. This time, she knew the colonel's exact location. If she failed and was discovered, it would mean Sasha was an inside man. Guided by Sasha, Vassili, under immense pressure, ambushed in front of the sniper point in the dead of night. The yellow cannon was the colonel's only route. Thus, Vassili ambushed all night, and the physical and mental stress near his limit made his eyes uncontrollable. Unaware, the colonel went out hunting as usual. With just this one mistake, Vassili missed his only chance. Soon, the colonel arrived at the sniper point in the building, where the German and Soviet troops outside were engaged in fierce combat, and the situation was very tense. After a round of assault, the outside turned into a scene of purgatory, and soon, the colonel spotted the reflection of a sniper scope among the many corpses. The colonel immediately understood everything about the opponent's sniper position, but just as he was about to shoot, a German soldier scavenging the belongings of the dead not only blocked his view but also disturbed the positions of Vassili and others who were playing dead, causing him to lose his target and abandon the action. Afterwards, both the German and Soviet forces believed Vassili had died in the chaos of war, simply because the soldier scavenging the dead mistakenly took Vassili's identification. Moreover, Vassili couldn't reveal himself in time to avoid the enemy, and he got married. For a time, the German army began broadcasting Vassili's death to crush the Soviet army's morale. After all, Vassili was already an invincible legend in the Soviet army. His death was enough to break the entire Soviet spirit. Indeed, as the news of Vassili's death spread, chaos ensued throughout the Soviet Union, and the troops in battle were retreating step by step. The higher-ups ordered the colonel to return home. Whether Vassili was alive or not, their goal had been achieved. However, the colonel knew very well that Vassili was not dead. He wanted to stay, not only to have a showdown with Vassili but also to avenge his son who was sniped. That night, when the colonel found Sasha again, she was weeping bitterly over Vassili's death. This confirmed the colonel's suspicion that she was a double agent. The colonel not only told her that Vassili was still alive but also said he would go hunting at the train station the next day. After speaking, he made Sasha swear not to tell anyone. Sasha agreed. It wasn't until late at night that Vassili returned to the camp. She confessed her mistake to Danilov. She intended to use the German propaganda to end the matter with her own death. Unexpectedly, Sasha revealed her conversation with the colonel. Clearly, this was the final showdown. Before dawn, the colonel had already set up his gun. The result also proved that Sasha had spread her words. However, at the moment, she chose not to act. On Vassili's way to the duel, he happened to encounter Tanya, who was looking for her. After this brief encounter with life and death, Tanya no longer hides her feelings, and Vassili doesn't want to have any regrets. Just then, Danilov, hiding in the shadows, sees them kissing and, driven to madness, immediately orders his men to act. The content is that Vassili is avoiding his duties and publicly making defeatist statements. Meanwhile, Sasha, who is about to return, encounters the colonel who has been waiting for a long time. What is Sasha's identity? The colonel already knows, so he wants to give her a big gift before killing Vassili. Soon, Tanya discovers Sasha's body, and overwhelmed with grief and anger, she wants to immediately seek revenge on the colonel. Under Vassili's strong persuasion, Tanya finally restrains her impulse. Vassili promises her that he will make the colonel pay with blood. With Vassili's promise, Tanya grabs a gun and rushes into the station being bombarded by artillery. He first finds Danilov. To Tanya, Sasha was like a brother. Now, with this outcome, all he can do is protect Sasha's mother. And the only person who can do this is Danilov. To trick the mother into boarding the ship and leaving, Danilov falsely claims that Sasha has defected to the German army and won't be coming back. After hearing this, the mother believes her son can at least stay alive, so she listens to Tanya, packs her things, and prepares to board the ship. But during the transfer, the three suddenly encounter a German bombing. Seeing Tanya lying motionless on the ground, Danilov is filled with despair. At the mother's pleading, the military doctor carries Tanya onto the ship. Whether she can survive depends on her own fate. Soon after, Danilov returns to the train station. He tells Vassili that he thought he was a saint, but even during wartime, he found himself doing selfish things, feeling jealous, slandering, and even taking away someone's love. After saying this, he pauses and continues, revealing the news that Tanya has already passed away. Hearing this, Vassili feels as if his soul has been drained. But he still has a mission to complete, hasn't fulfilled his promise to Tanya, and hasn't avenged Sasha with his own hands. So, he doesn't even have the right to cry. He can only hold back his emotions and continue to hold his rifle. Danilov knows that the duel between Vassili and the colonel will be hard to resolve quickly. Moreover, failure would mean death. Although Danilov is not a hero in chaotic times, at this moment, he is willing to sacrifice his own life. To gain an advantage over Vassili, and before Vassili could react, he removed his helmet and stuck his head out. The colonel used precise planning to have Danilov atone with his death, but because the distance was too far, the colonel wasn't sure if he had killed Vassili. A night passed like this, and the colonel didn't notice any movement from the other side. So, he stepped out, ready to go over and confirm the body. Just as he passed a train, his keen instincts made him stop. At this moment, Vassili was standing not far away with his gun raised. After killing the colonel, Vassili placed the colonel's sidearm next to Danilov, as a gesture of acknowledgement for his sacrifice. 2 months later, on February 3, 1943, the German army surrendered, and the Soviet Union won. The legendary sniper Vassili not only survived but also found the surviving Tanya in the medical ward. The events under the City of Ice and Darkness were directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud, starring Jude Law and Ed Harris, and released in the year 2001 as a drama film. The film is based on true events. Vassili Zaitsev was highly decorated for his achievements, receiving the Order of Lenin multiple times, and was ultimately honored with the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. The rifle he used as a symbol of victory over the Nazi German army is still preserved in the Stalingrad History Museum. Vassili was originally just an ordinary shepherd, but due to his extraordinary marksmanship, he repeatedly achieved success in the war, becoming a sniper hero and boosting morale. Initially, he felt it was a great honor, but as the propaganda exaggerated and intensified, he gradually felt overwhelmed. After all, he was human, not a god, and it was impossible for him to never fail or always be victorious. Indeed, in times of crisis, symbolic role models can unite collective will, but over-glorifying individuals can also bring pressure and distortion, ultimately backfiring. Fortunately, Vassili was not swept away by external disturbances and quickly adjusted his state. Moreover, he honed his will by confronting strong enemies, overcame his inner fears, and grew into a true hero. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward and take action despite knowing the dangers and challenges ahead. This kind of courage is one of the brightest glows in the human heart. It allows people to face difficulties and the unknown without being shackled by fear. Instead, it's by relying on inner beliefs and a sense of responsibility to drive oneself forward. Every challenge in life is a test of courage. True strength doesn't lie in completely eliminating inner fears, but in being able to overcome them even when feeling scared and uneasy, steadfastly upholding one's mission and responsibilities. In this complex and ever-changing world, everyone faces various challenges and difficulties. These challenges may leave us feeling confused, fearful, and helpless, but it is these experiences that shape our character and strengthen our will. When we choose to face challenges with courage instead of avoiding them, we discover that we have unlimited potential and possibilities. Alright, that's all for today's movie sharing. Feel free to like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next encounter.